Donald Trump warns new Venezuelan leader as protests erupt against U.S. military operation. Venezuelan residents fear further depreciation of the country's currency. And one person injured as a basketball hoop collapses in To Kwa Wan. Hello and welcome to TVB News. I'm Melissa Hekalea. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says Washington wants Venezuela's oil sector to serve U.S. interests. It comes days after a U.S. military operation that seized Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro from his home in Caracas and took him to a detention center in New York. President Donald Trump, meanwhile, said the U.S. is in charge of Venezuela and warned its vice president of consequences if she doesn't do the right thing. Nazvi Karim with more.
The White House released photos of U.S. President Donald Trump watching intently as his military forces carried out its operation to seize Maduro. Later, on Air Force One, he proclaimed that the U.S. is in charge of the country, despite Secretary of State Marco Rubio trying to tone down previous comments that Washington will run Venezuela. Trump said Cuban security personnel were also killed in the attack.
You know, a lot of Cubans were killed yesterday. You know that. A lot of Cubans were killed.
Do you know how many?
The bodyguards. No, they're looking, but there was a lot of death on the other side. No death on our side, but there was a lot of death on the other side, unfortunately. But a lot of Cubans were killed yesterday, trying to protect him.
The conversation then turned to Colombia and its president, Gustavo Petro.
Colombia is very sick, too, run by a sick man who likes making cocaine and selling it to the United States. And he's not going to be doing it very long, let me tell you.
What does that mean? He's not going to be doing it very long.
He's not doing it very long. He has cocaine mills and cocaine factories. He's not going to be doing it very long.
So there will be an operation by the U.S. and...
It sounds good to me.
President Rodriguez, who was reportedly appointed president by a court, said Maduro is the rightful leader of Venezuela. She said the country remains united and was initially defiant after the U.S. operation. But she later softened her stance, saying she wants to collaborate with Trump and ensure respectful relations. Nazvi Karim, TVB News.
Foreign Minister Wang Yi says China opposes any country imposing its will on another in reaction to the U.S. military operation against Venezuela. Wang was speaking in Beijing during a meeting of the 7th round of the China-Pakistan Foreign Ministers' Strategic Dialogue. Meanwhile, protests against the U.S. actions were held in New York and elsewhere. Here's Nazvi Karim again.
During his meeting with Pakistani leaders, Wang Yi spoke about the U.S. military operation that seized Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro and took him to a detention center in New York. He said China is against any country playing the role of world police or any nation claiming to be an international judge. Wang said the sovereignty and security of all countries should be protected by international law. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Lin Jian today said that China has already expressed its condemnation, saying the U.S. wantonly used force against Venezuela, an act that seriously violates international law and the basic norms governing international relations.
Not a penny, not a dollar.
In New York, dozens of protesters gathered outside the Brooklyn jail where Maduro is being held, with the crowd chanting, "We won't pay for war and slaughter."
Not only in violation of international law, but also in violation of U.S. law. The president does not have the right to take unilateral military action against another country and detain its president, because it wants to.
A demonstration against the U.S. action was also held in Amsterdam in the Netherlands. The protest was organized by various action groups who gathered in front of the U.S. consulate. In Madrid, Spain, these Venezuelans celebrated. For a second day in a row, Venezuelans supporting the U.S. operation filled the capital's central square with flags, sang the national anthem and danced. Spain has a large population of Venezuelans who have escaped the economic and political crisis in the country. Elsewhere, Slovakia Prime Minister Robert Fico hit out at the U.S., saying superpowers do whatever they want and have completely erased the existence of international law. He also said the United Nations Security Council is completely toothless in trying to prevent such action.
In light of Venezuela declaring a state of national emergency after Washington's seizure of President Nicolas Maduro, some Chinese residents in the South American country said there have been cases of panic buying on the streets, but said public order remains largely in place. Timothy Lee tells us more.
Mrs. Lee, who had emigrated to Venezuela several years ago, says she and her husband make their living by wholesaling daily goods. She said they were too afraid to open their shop for business after President Maduro's seizure, but emphasized that public order remains reasonable in Venezuela. Lee said the streets have been largely quiet over the past 2 days, and there were no protests in her neighborhood, but some residents were still seen panic buying. She added the largest impact of Maduro's kidnapping on Venezuela is the depreciation of the Venezuelan bolivar, with the currency's value dropping by around 10% each day. This, as the mainland academic believes Washington will not be able to achieve their desired results from seizing the leader of a sovereign nation. Wu Xinbo, the dean of Fudan University's Institute of International Studies, stressed such hegemonic actions will inevitably bring about instability in the region instead of peace and prosperity. He added strong opposition voices could be heard from the Democratic Party within the U.S., and that there will be a long-term negative impact on Washington's reputation on the international stage. Timothy Lee, TVB News.
The leaders of Denmark and Greenland urged U.S. President Donald Trump to stop threatening to take over the world's largest island. Trump said again on Sunday that the U.S. needs Greenland from the standpoint of national security, and the European Union needs the U.S. to have it. Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen said earlier in the day that the U.S. has no right to annex any of the 3 countries in the Danish kingdom. Trump spoke a day after the U.S.'s military action against Venezuela, where they seized the country's leader. Greenland's Prime Minister Jens Frederik Nielsen said, "When the U.S. president links us to Venezuela and military intervention, it's not just wrong, it is disrespectful." British and French warplanes carried out an airstrike in central Syria on an underground facility believed to be an Islamic State group weapons store. This, according to the British Defense Ministry. The attacks hit the structure in the mountains just north of the historic Syrian town of Palmyra. The ministry said the British military used Typhoon fighter jets and unloaded paveway-guided bombs to target a number of access tunnels around the facility. French fighter jets also joined in the strike. UN experts say the Islamic State still commands between 5,000 and 7,000 members across its former strongholds in Syria and Iraq. Last month, the U.S. also launched strikes in Syria against Islamic State fighters in retaliation for an attack that killed 2 U.S. soldiers and a civilian interpreter. Saudi Arabia-backed National Shield Forces retook the port city of Mukalla, which was seized by southern separatists last month. The city was retaken after days of Saudi airstrikes. The Emirati-backed separatist Southern Transitional Council was reported to have withdrawn from military camps. Tensions rose after the council moved last month to seize areas, including the governorate of Hadramaut. South Saudi Arabia had earlier bombed a shipment of Emirati weapons. Riyadh said it will host a conference to bring together all southern factions in Yemen to discuss just solutions to the southern cause. Still ahead, South Korean leader Lee Jae-myung begins his China state visit while more of his compatriots travel to China. And a startup in South Korea keen on opening a Hong Kong office. Welcome back. President Xi Jinping expressed readiness to enhance strategic communication and practical cooperation during today's meeting with Taoiseach of Ireland, Michael Martin. Martin landed in Beijing Sunday afternoon. This is the first time in 14 years that an Irish leader has visited China. She welcomed him, emphasizing that mutual respect, equality, and mutual benefit are valuable experiences for the long-term and stable development of China-Ireland relations, which both sides should carry forward and promote. He added they should have more cooperation in fields of artificial intelligence and the digital economy. Martin said his country was committed to developing a strategic partnership and open trade with China. Affirming adherence to the One China policy, the Irish Prime Minister acknowledged China's indispensable role in the global stage and appreciated the contribution it has made to the United Nations, particularly in peacekeeping. President Xi Jinping held a welcoming ceremony for visiting South Korean President Lee Jae-myung in Beijing. Both attended a signing ceremony of cooperation documents. Lee's state visit to China included an economic delegation of over 200 entrepreneurs from South Korea. The two leaders convened their meeting at the Great Hall of the People. Lee pledged continued efforts to develop the strategic cooperative partnership between the two countries into an irreversible trend, noting their summit is an important opportunity for full restoration of frayed relations. She said that it's imperative for Seoul to make correct strategic choices. He pressed for more cooperative results in AI and green industry and said they should jointly safeguard peace and stability in Northeast Asia. Following the summit, the two sides signed 14 memorandums of understanding spanning economic trade and cooperation, sci-tech, digital sectors, and environment and climate. The number of tourists from South Korea is showing a sharp uptick as China's unilateral visa waiver measures come into effect, boosting airlines, travel business, and people-to-people exchanges. Danny Zhou has the report.
Beijing has introduced visa exemption measures for ordinary passport holders from 9 countries, including the Republic of Korea, allowing them to come to China for tourism, business, family visits, and transit for up to 30 days. The measures, first enacted in late 2024, have been extended to December 31st, 2026. South Korean airlines such as Korean Air and Asiana Airlines boosted flights to China to meet the surging demand of tour groups by announcing additional routes. On Sunday morning, Air Busan flight BX3795, a charter service carrying over 210 passengers, landed in Xiamen City in Fujian Province to mark the official launch of the first direct round-trip route between Xiamen and Busan. The nearly 2-hour flight is scheduled to operate from January the 4th to March the 1st, with 4 flights each week. Meanwhile, the Zhangjiajie National Forest Park in Hunan Province saw the influx of inbound visitors over the past years. Official data shows it received over 400,000 South Korean tourists in 2025 alone. The park, which is part of the UNESCO World Heritage Site Wulingyuan Scenic Area, grabbed the hearts of many holidaymakers with its otherworldly soaring quartzite sandstone pillars.
I've always wanted to travel to China, and now with the 15-day visa-free policy, it feels much more convenient. Snow isn't something you see often, but here in Zhangjiajie, seeing the snowy landscape truly made me feel like I was rising into the sky, and listening to local singers perform for us on the lake was so wonderful.
Jin Xin, executive vice president of the Zhangjiajie Tourism Group, said the tourist site has been catering for the taste of South Korean visitors by presenting authentic Korean-flavored dishes, while strengthening cooperation with travel agencies and airlines in the IOK. Young Korean speakers in China's northeast have also been certified as tour guides in Zhangjiajie. With high hopes for the South Korean president's China trip, Jin expects it could foster a honeymoon phase in bilateral relations and further extend or lengthen the visa-free policy. Danny Zhou, TVB News.
Back locally, a basketball hoop collapsed at the Khao Pui Lung Road playground in To Kwa Wan, injuring a young man. After the incident, authorities blocked off the basketball court with barriers. Signs of rust were visible at the base of the support frame. The base of the other basketball hoop was also rusty. The incident happened at 10:30 p.m. on Sunday. A 20-year-old man was playing basketball with friends when the basketball hoop suddenly collapsed, hitting him. It's understood that the man suffered abrasions to his head and hurt his left knee and right ribs. He was conscious when taken to Queen Elizabeth Hospital for treatment. South Korea's President Lee Jae-myung's visit to China is expected to focus on economic and trade issues, strengthening cooperation between the two countries. A tech startup from South Korea plans to venture into Hong Kong to explore business opportunities. Samantha Lee has more.
When it comes to South Korean technology, most people think of the big global brands. But startups are also carving out their own niches. This company has developed a super app, which is like a South Korean version of WeChat, which integrates multiple functions. It creates virtual communities for like-minded individuals to interact, allowing for chatting, event organization, surveys, and e-commerce. They are eyeing to extend the business to Hong Kong.
Hong Kong is, undoubtedly the epicenter of all the financial hub. So in Asia, so we believe that crypto, DeFi, and as well as community IP content, it has a beautiful environment that really fits all these industries and collaborators. It's the main gateway to Chinese market as well as all Southeast Asia. So we hope to have our branch office in Hong Kong.
Being keen on innovation and technology, South Korea plans to incubate 10,000 startups over the next 5 years, with artificial intelligence being the focus. Gao Wei-shen, a professor in charge of business in South Korea Dongguk University, believes the South Korean domestic market may not be able to accommodate such a large number of startups. He suggests Hong Kong to offer more tax incentives and assistance in finding office spaces to attract South Korean firms. Samantha Lee, TVB News.
A man died and 8 people were injured on Sunday after a fire broke out at a public housing unit in Shek Kip Mei. The Fire Services Department reminds the public that fire doors should be closed, which can help prevent smoke or heat from spreading. They also gave a demonstration on how to use a fire hose reel. Samantha Lee tells us more.
The fatal blaze occurred yesterday in a flat on the 21st floor of Mei Yu House in Shek Kip Mei Estate. A resident said there were many potential fire hazards in the building. The fire door was always open, while cardboard pieces were left in the hallway. One day after the fire doors remained open on several floors, while miscellaneous items were placed on a staircase. Some residents prefer the fire doors to be opened, saying it helps to keep the air fresh. However, the firefighters remind the public that fire doors should always be closed. Rocky Ng, Assistant Division Officer of the Fire Services Department, explained that the fire door is designed to segmentize a building, helping to stop the thick smoke or heat from spreading. He also called on the public to get to know how to use a fire hose reel. There are 4 steps to operating a fire hose reel. Activate the fire alarm call point. Open the control valve. Break the glass of the nozzle enclosure and pull out the nozzle. And turn on the nozzle and direct the jet at the base of the fire. But what if no water comes out or the water pressure is too low? Rocky Ng advised to check if the hose is intact and leave the scene as soon as possible if the system is not working. Samantha Lee, TVB News.
That's the news. Thanks for watching. Pearl Magazine is up shortly. See you then.